authenticity is freedom, and freedom is authenticity. And we have the option to be authentic in every moment and to be free. Are you being authentic in every moment? That's your freedom. Where it turns into vulnerability is where we have shame around our authenticity. And then most of the time we hide that aspect of our authenticity and vulnerability. The practice that you and I have together that we've developed is when we feel shame around anything that we're feeling or how we are, that we don't want to tell another person, then we do. Today, let's talk about, should we introduce ourselves or just jump into a conversation?
Whatever you like.
Okay. I'm Lila de Vento, and I'm a feminine radiance coach, and I'm here to help women resurrect the goddess through their bodies. And Ra, who are you? Tell us your
Yeah.
name.
My name is Sunbeam, and I'm a relationship freedom coach for men. I'm helping men to build fulfilling relationships without sacrificing their freedom, and keeping the center within a committed relationship, staying true to yourself.
Beautiful. I love it. So today I wanted to talk about, I have a friend, we were having this discussion about, I believe that the universe is a mirror for our consciousness and where we're at. I feel like everything that comes to you in your life is a mirror for your energy, for your consciousness, for what you're emanating, for what you need to learn to move into a higher dimension or your next level. I feel like projection is related to the mirror. The mirror reflects what you're projecting out into the mirror of this reality. If we're projecting fear or men are assholes or I don't have enough money, that's what is reflected back to us. And she doesn't agree with me because she is in a relationship with someone who's struggling with alcoholism. She was like, I don't see how his issues and his alcoholism are a projection or reflection of me. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, it's like I was talking to a friend yesterday who said she can't hear that word anymore, projections, and people are overusing it. Which could be true. The frustrating part with the word projection is if people use it and they don't take accountability for themselves. So something I see happening is like you calling somebody out for something they obviously do. And they say, no, you're just projecting, when you actually give them the chance to own their actions and words. So that's
Which
just
could
in
be,
brackets.
yeah, and that's the thing is you never know, like if you're seeing something in someone that you call out and then they're like, you're projecting, that could be true. You could be projecting your shadow, something that you don't see or acknowledge in yourself. If you're seeing it externally, is it even external? Or is it just you are actually projecting and you're picking it up in them, which doesn't mean that they're not doing it. But it's
Or
like
they are
it's totally,
projecting, so it's two mirrors looking at each other.
yeah. Infinity, because you've seen that, right? When there's two mirrors and then it just goes both directions infinitely.
And I mean, the whole projection thing, since you asked, it's a very deep part of my personal work and of my professional work, what I offer to men, because the idea of being constricted, restricted, or limited in a relationship is, in most cases, a projection of your own limitation onto the partner. So what you believe that you deserve is what you are able to receive from the outside.
Yeah. I
So
love
if
that you see that.
yeah. And me, as a former very avoidant man, I could not accept any partner who would accept me for more than I could accept in myself, obviously.
Mhm,
So
mhm,
then I would still, I want to make the distinction between authenticity and vulnerability that I came
mhm,
across a while ago with you. So
mhm,
I need to be authentic, right? I want to be as authentic as I can be. That is my definition of freedom. I can do
mhm,
whatever I want
mm,
to do. I can say whatever I want to say. That
mhm,
I can make choices and so on.
mhm,
So that's my idea of freedom, and that's a very high value for me,
mhm.
right? And authenticity and freedom are very similar.
Yeah.
And part of
Mm,
my authenticity might be vulnerability.
mhm,
The part of my authenticity that I learn to hide because
Mm-hmm.
I made experiences that people don't like that about me and they reject me and they shame me or they
Shameful.
push me away. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I
Mm.
learned to believe is shameful about my authenticity became my vulnerability.
Mm.
And therein lies a big, big chance, because then what I, in previous relationships, for example, learned to hide because they were
Mm-hmm.
rejecting me for it, they couldn't, or like that's another projection. Like they were not rejecting me, they were incapable of being with me in that. That doesn't say anything about me, right? It's not
Yeah.
personal about me. So the whole projection, rejection, it's one big game of mirrors. It's like going into a mirror chamber where every mirror looks at the
Yeah.
next one and so on. Vulnerability is the gateway in relationships to
Mm-hmm.
more authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
And so the more I practice, it's really like a devotional practice to do vulnerability
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to increase the possibility to be more authentic.
Mm-hmm.
And of course,
I love this so much.
it needs safe people for that. It needs
Yes.
safe people that are
Who
able
have a
to,
capacity.
who have the capacity. That's right. I think I answered your
Can I?
question.
Yes, you
Yeah.
absolutely answered my question. I just want to reiterate, authenticity is freedom, and freedom is authenticity. And we have the option to be authentic in every moment and to be free. Freedom's not about whether or not they're letting me be free or whether or not my life is letting me be free. It's like, no, are you being authentic in every moment? And that's your freedom.
Mm.
And where it turns into vulnerability is where we have shame around our authenticity. And then most of the time we hide that aspect of our authenticity and vulnerability. The practice that you and I have together that we've developed
Mm.
is when we feel shame around anything that we're feeling or how we are that we don't want to tell another person, then we do. And
Mm.
like I know for me, when I've had things come up of like, I don't want to tell him I'm feeling insecure, I was jealous about this other woman or whatever, that's when I say it. That's when I say, hey, I'm feeling insecure and this emotion came up in my body around this other woman. And it's not even about the
Mm.
other woman, it's about how I'm projecting. And this has happened multiple times. I remember one time you were in the bathroom in our room and you were listening to a voice memo of some other woman. I got jealous. I was like I had that body response. And then I realized it was me. You were listening to my voice.
Mm.
And it just makes me laugh. Again, it goes back to the whole, like it's all a house of mirrors. The more that we can expose our shame and a vulnerability to a loving
Mm.
person who's capable of holding that vulnerability and authenticity without getting defensive, without getting angry, without changing the subject, without trying to fix it, just holding that.
Awesome.
That's when we begin to heal and accept our own parts that we've shamed, our own parts of our authenticity that we've
Hmm.
shamed. And then we become less ashamed of it because,
Yeah.
like you and I are able to hold those when you feel shame around not enoughness or inadequacy. I'm like, I hear you and I understand it, but that's insane. Like, you are more than enough. You're amazing. This isn't true. What you're seeing and projecting isn't true. And that's why it
Yeah.
hurts. That's why
Yeah.
it causes suffering.
What shame essentially is the fear of rejection when being authentic. That's at least my definition.
So
Um,
good.
yeah. Who is fully authentic? Newborn child, maybe?
Or
Yeah.
a 98-year-old woman
Or 90.
or
A
man.
dement, what we call dement. Actually, so the mind is kind of absent and they are actually fully authentic with what's happening.
Mhm.
I would like to expand on the idea of freedom because you said, or I said, actually, you echoed, freedom is authenticity. While
Mhm.
I heard that back from you, I had to reframe it a little bit. So there's a difference between freedom as a fact and freedom as an experience.
Okay.
So we are all free. No one can ever take your
Yes.
freedom away. That's what I truly believe. Even if you
Yes.
are, yeah.
And I just want to say, if you want to argue with that, read the book by Viktor Frankl. He was in a concentration camp and he like
Mm,
wrote the book on a roll of toilet paper. And he's
mm,
like, we are the ones who create freedom or suffering in our own minds, and we can choose to be free even in a concentration camp. So yeah, Man's Search for
mhm.
Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
And also me personally, I had experiences where I had limited outside freedom and I felt very free myself. And I had other situations where I had a lot of outside freedom, and I just felt really trapped in my own head and in my
Mm-hmm.
own concepts and limitations that my subconsciousness, my belief system, whatever would hold up. So again, freedom can be like, okay, this person is in jail or not. Like that's kind of an outside freedom. So yeah, there is a limitation.
Mm-hmm.
And I had that experience in the past quite a lot. Now it's getting much easier for myself and men in my field. It's like I call it the first stage of freedom,
Mm-hmm.
which is like freedom fighter syndrome. So it's kind of like I want to free myself from limitation. For example, relationship is a limitation. I say yes to this person, to this woman. So I say no to other things. But that feels at a certain stage like a limitation.
Mm-hmm.
You are not as free as without being in a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I would argue, from my awareness now, if you say no to any relationship, you take away the possibility of having the benefits from a relationship. So that's also a limitation. And there is clear
Mm-hmm.
benefits for being single, and
Mm.
there's other benefits for having a relationship, for example.
And that thing about a trigger is where you're not free. And so if you choose to submit yourself to a relationship in which all of your deepest woundings are going to come up,
Hmm.
triggered by the relationship, that's actually potentially is your greatest path to freedom, because that's the most triggering thing. Relationships and children are going to trigger you at your most fundamental, deepest parts. And you can use them for
Yeah,
freedom if you want to.
I don't like the word submit. Sounds
I know
like
you
giving
don't.
up. Submitting myself to something, no. I want to have a choice. I want to consciously, because it's in full alignment and full integrity with my being, choose for
Yeah.
something that
But
doesn't
what if you
feel like
choose to submit? What if you choose to submit yourself to pleasure?
that's not my idea of submission. Submission is I give up uh, from someone or something else that tries to dominate me. So it's not my own choice. So if I surrender is something else than submission.
But what if you
So I would call it,
choose to submit? Like in role
yeah,
play,
then
in
it's surrender.
dominance and
Then it's not,
submission.
that is not submission. So
But
for
it's
me,
still submission. Like it can be if you're choosing. And when I said the word, I knew it was going to trigger you.
hmm, maybe we just use different vocabulary for the same thing.
Okay.
So
Yes.
at the first stage, if I do not really know what my direction is,
Mm-hmm.
which is very understandable if I have suffered from enmeshment trauma and I needed to people please a lot in the past to survive, um, then I need to find out who I am and what I want. In that stage, it doesn't make much sense to be in a relationship, for
Mm,
example.
yeah.
I remember when I first went to that phase that I would call conscious narcissism, just
Mm-hmm.
focusing on this guy and doing
Mm-hmm.
it consciously to catch up
Mm-hmm.
with the inner child that couldn't be
Mm-hmm.
narcissistic in the age appropriate
Mm-hmm.
phase. Like what you do with your kids is you let them be narcissistic if they need to.
Mm-hmm.
They You don't let them cross your boundaries like big time. That's another thing, having your own boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's something within your own boundaries and they just want to do it, you let them do it. So they know what they want, right? And
And I feel like
so
that's a
that,
reclamation of power. Like what you're talking about is that choice to be narcissistic and to almost fight against the oppression of a relationship is
yes,
you reclaiming the power that you weren't able to
yeah,
take as a child with your own mother.
yes. That's why I don't like the word commitment issues because it's judgmental. It says you're wrong, you're bad,
You're
you
broken.
are broken because
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to commit.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, that's complete nonsense. There is
Mm-hmm.
no, I mean, there is books who say like you should be in a relationship, but it's just not very much 2025. So
Yeah.
the word should, I think we should ban that from our vocabulary totally.
Yes. Stop shitting on
And
yourself.
I love that. What I call the caveman or the hermit phase of having all the outside freedom, freeing yourself from the idea of duty
Mm-hmm.
and responsibility that are put on you and come to a place of full integrity and like I feel myself, this is what I want and so on. And then from that place actually can emerge authenticity, and then the
Mm-hmm.
freedom in that second stage would be to act according to my authenticity and find freedom in that. So making choices, every choice is a limitation. Every choice is a limitation. So either I choose for or against something. If I know about myself, I love ice cream, and especially chocolate ice cream. I don't care if there's 20, 30, or 100 different kinds of ice cream in the specific shop where I go. I just want that they have really good chocolate ice cream. The rest I don't care about, right?
Yeah.
If I'm a vegetarian, I really don't bother that I'm restricted and limited by not eating meat. Like as long as it's from a convicted point of view and I'm not actually missing it. You know, if it comes really from my heart and I'm on a vegetarian diet, I am limited. But it's actually every choice, every clear standing that is authentic for me is a limitation of anything else that I could do instead. So I'm a
Yeah.
very big fan of minimalism, not, let's say, kind of monk practice, like where I'm taking things away that I actually like and strip myself from pleasure. The opposite. Like I know what gives me the most pleasure and what lights me up, and I do more of that and less of the other things that don't. So there's a very good book I want to highlight, which is called Clear Your Clutter with Feng Shui by Karen Kingston. It's one of the best books I've read. And it's the foundation of any Feng Shui is actually having less. Like of conscious spaces, having only things that have a meaning for you. And to extend that on people, on activities, on food, whatever. Like this feels very freeing for me to quote unquote restrict myself, to put boundaries on what do I want and what do I don't want. So I can just like, wow, go really fast on the track of authenticity
And pleasure.
and pleasure, which is kind of
Yeah.
the same. If I'm authentic, like
Yeah.
following my pleasure is authentic. So
Yeah, and the only reason not to do that is shame. Like, why wouldn't you follow your highest pleasure? Only
yeah,
if you are shaming yourself for it.
shame or fear of any kind.
Which, yeah, and then what's the link between fear and shame?
Well,
That'd be an
shame is a
interesting conversation.
specific fear of rejection.
But I wanted to say the word decide, the Latin root of that word is to kill. You're basically killing off all of the other potential timelines or potential things. And hopefully if you're in your authenticity, choosing the one that's most aligned with your pleasure, with your joy, your highest self, your highest timeline. And to walk on the one highest timeline in this lifetime, you have to kill off all the other ones. If you're keeping all of them open and not deciding, you're not actually living. You're not living. You're not moving forward on any path. And some people feel like that's
Yeah.
safer than killing off the other paths or potential relationships. But then it's like, do you ever go anywhere?
Or any path that can be relationship, career. There's a German word called Torschlusspanik, which means the fear of closing doors, basically, or like panicking if there's like, for example, you reach a certain age and like certain things you feel your body doesn't allow you anymore to do, and I was like, oh my god, I wanted to do so many things, and now my life is getting shorter. Time is limited. It's actually one of the few limited resources we have as a person. Most other things are not so much limited. The only thing that matters is that you do something that you want to do.
What do you want to do with your time? What do you want to do with
Isn't
your
there
life?
there's this famous quote of Tolkien, the only thing you have to decide is what you do with the time that's given to you.
Not all those who wander are lost. This is my favorite Tolkien quote. That's a good question to ask. What do you want to do with your time? What brings you the most pleasure, fulfillment, happiness? Like what lights your body up? What's in alignment with your dreams?
Maybe to bring it to a closure, the starting point was projection and how everything is a projection. It's a double-sided lens, I would even say. So what I'm focusing on is what I see. For example, if I look out of my window, there's this game, at least in Germany, we have this game. One person says, something that I see is green. And then you try to find what it is. Maybe it's the grass, maybe it's the trees, maybe it's a frog.
I
And
spy.
so, yeah, so the game is like I'm putting a filter on, look at everything that's green. The question is like what I'm looking at is red or whatever. So you have a filter on through which you see,
You keep talking.
yeah, through that filter you see all the things that are according. And if we have that as a game, it's very obvious. But without the game, our mind, our conditioning, the lenses that we put on to see how we see reality, is already limiting what we are able to perceive. So what we focus on is what we kind of perceive.
Mm-hmm.
So if you perceive problems in your relationship, you're looking for problems. If you're a problem solver, like I used to be, a math teacher is all about problem solving, and then you have a right answer, and you're like, "Yay, I did it!" So, if you're a problem solver, you need a problem in the first place to solve. So you find problems by looking for them. So
Yeah.
if you have a belief system that you deserve to struggle
Mm-hmm.
in a relationship, that's all you got so far, and that's what you keep attracting, that's what you're gonna get. And you mentioned your friend being with an alcoholic. If she has a boundary, for example, for herself, I don't want to be with any addict, she would
Mm-hmm.
naturally break up with that person
Mm-hmm.
or any other
Mm-hmm.
person who would be in that condition.
Or
She
not
doesn't
engaged
choose that.
sexually. Yeah,
Yeah,
not engaged
she
sexually with somebody who has those active programs and
yeah,
patterns.
she's choosing against it, which is valid. She can choose
Mm-hmm.
whatever she wants. If she doesn't like him being in that condition, but she still chooses for that, for him, she chooses against herself. This is where the problem starts. If
Yeah.
you actually choose yourself, you do not have problems.
And I feel like our path that we've walked, like at the beginning, I wanted to be more than friends, and you had a boundary around
Mm,
engaging sexually. And then I would check in with myself. Does this still feel good to engage only as
mhm.
friends with physical intimacy? And it
Yeah.
did. It was always very supportive, very loving. It felt very balanced, but I was constantly checking in. Does this still feel balanced? Does this feel good? Or do I
Hmm.
want more and it's not a match to the more that I'm wanting? And there's this gap that makes me feel not good. So it's a constant checking in and calibration with the
Mm.
choices that I was making.
And I love that you did that. I also remember that I did ask you the same thing, like, hey, do you
Mm-hmm.
still feel like you want to engage? Because I did love you from the start. So is this like, I love myself and I respect my
Mm-hmm.
own needs and I love you and I want you to meet your own needs as well. So if our
Mm-hmm.
interaction isn't really fulfilling for you, then for your sake, we can stop. I'm not building up resentment or gonna get in a revengeful spirit because you follow your truest calling.
Mm-hmm.
That's also something really important to mention.
Yeah, which I have had that. I had a partner, non-sexual partner, and we've been very intensely
Mm,
relating, connecting for 7 months when I was living in Argentina. When I finally was like, this doesn't work for me anymore, I need to go, he was
mm,
angry. And he didn't
mhm,
project it onto me. He just was like, okay, I'm going to take space. I'm really angry. And I was like,
mm.
okay. He was angry.
He has every
And
right
this,
to be angry. Like,
yeah, and he
yeah.
felt betrayed. And in a way, like I was betraying him for myself. And I
Mm,
didn't even know what I wanted or needed or where I was going. It was like, I was like, I need to figure out what my dreams are because I don't even know
mm.
what the fuck those are. And I can't do that while I'm focused on your dreams and on you.
Yeah, we could make a
Yeah.
whole episode on betrayal.
And loyalty.
Am I not in integrity? Am I not
Mhm.
accountable for what I say I will do? Then,
Mhm.
okay, that's me not being accountable
Mhm.
without you having to take that personal. If you make
Mhm.
that about yourself, you experience betrayal.
I have a friend in mind, and I have betrayed him many times by letting him down,
Mm,
by not being
mm,
accountable for what I say that I'm going to do. But for me, it's always felt 100% in
yeah.
alignment to not be accountable for whatever it was.
Mm,
And that's pissed him off. And it's been an interesting moving through not taking on the
mm,
shame
mhm,
that he has wanted to put on me or the
mhm.
anger. And yeah, that's an interesting conversation. But I want to say I had this mantra come through this morning of I love you and I love me. And I want us both to be happy and free.
I love you and I love me. Yeah, write it down. It's beautiful. You have probably
I
already
wrote
did.
it down. I already wrote
Yeah.
it down in my
Nice, very nice.
notebook of billions.
Yeah, maybe last thing I want to mention, an ex-lover slash short-term partner that I had that I was deeply in love with. She was not capable of meeting my need for consistency.
Mm-hmm.
So she would say something and do something else,
Mm-hmm.
or keep changing things around multiple times a day.
Mm-hmm.
And I still do love her. An old version of me would have feel betrayed.
Mm-hmm.
And there was moments where I had that also while I was in this relationship. I felt like, ah, why is she doing that? That hurts. And but actually, it's just her capacity of meeting my needs. So it's not that
Mm-hmm.
she's betraying me, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, she's just inconsistent. That's a matter of fact. And can I love her with her inconsistency? Yes. Do I want
Mm-hmm.
to engage with that? No.
Mm. Yeah.
So my friend just knocked
Mm.
at the door, so I think we
Okay.
can close this for today.
Yes. I love you. Bye.
Thank you so much. Love you too. See you soon.